Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on today's Prime Minister's questions, which is the last one of the year. Won't be another one for a few weeks, where the leaders of the three largest parties all ask questions of one form or another on the mismanagement of the NHS by the Tories. A rare confluence of questioning from the different parties, presumably because with winter just around the corner, the public are going to be very interested to know why we are about to have another Tory NHS winter crisis. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. Now, before I get on to the questions from the main opposition leaders, I am actually going to start with a question from a notable Tory backbencher because it actually surprised me. It was Michael Fabricant, who's one of the more colourful Tory MPs. He was asking about various aspects of, I suppose, local infrastructure in his constituency. And he ended up by saying that Lichfield, which is the constituency he represents, needs a leisure centre. And I immediately thought, why is he telling the Prime Minister this? Don't the Tories believe that if there's a need for some amenity, that the private sector will provide it? I mean, that's their entire guiding principle in government, isn't it? Shrink down the size of the state because the private sector will provide anything that people really need. The question, such as it was, did actually attract quite a bit of laughter amongst MPs, and I was wondering if they were laughing at the same thing that was puzzling me. But anyway, on to the main questions. All of the main opposition leaders did begin by expressing condolences to the families of the people who were drowned trying to cross the channel. In the case of Sunak, his pretence at sorrow was poorly timed, as he had presented a supposed plan to Parliament yesterday to deal with the crossings that didn't actually do anything to allow safe routes for genuine asylum seekers at all. But the main questions were related to the NHS, with the nursing strike in England beginning, and Starmer described it as a badge of shame for the government. Both Starmer and Davey of the Lib Dems gave specific examples of the human costs of a healthcare system that doesn't have the capacity to cope. Used to, not anymore. Starmer reminded MPs that all Sunak had to do to cancel the imminent strikes was agree to meet with nurses, discuss pay. That's it. Sunak said that his government do get involved in talks. And he also said specifically, because they do get involved in talks, but he did say specifically talks about pay as well. And I thought, well, this is an objective lie, because the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has refused to do so. He has met nursing groups. He has discussed things with them, but he has refused on every single occasion to discuss pay. So Sunak saying that his government were talking specifically about pay was a complete lie. And I wish Starmer had pointed this out, being honest. The entire exchange was predictably about Labour pointing out that the government had the power to stop the strikes but refused to do so. That the reasons for the strikes in the first place was because the government refused to properly fund the NHS, and that this was a culmination of Tory abuse from before COVID. In fact, if Starmer was focusing very much on the healthcare issue, he could have widened it to the general attitude with strikes, I think. I'm not saying he definitely should have done, but for example, the government are known to have interfered with rail workers because rail operators were prepared to come up with an offer that I think the RMT would have responded positively to. That's the suggestion I'm getting. And the government blocked it. And you think, well, why did the government block an offer from private companies who can offer what they want that would have stopped the strikes? It's because the government want to. So maybe Starmer could have made more of that. Sunak told another lie, actually, in terms of, in terms of the healthcare thing, because Starmer said something about the damage that was done to the NHS before COVID. And then Sunak, he described Starmer as having said that COVID had nothing to do with problems in the NHS. Sunak came up with an example of how COVID specifically had made things worse, suggesting that Starmer says COVID had nothing to do with it. It's like, no, Starmer didn't make that claim. What Starmer said was that there were many problems which preceded COVID and were directly attributable to Tory mismanagement. And in evidence for this, Starmer referred to the report published this week, which I discussed a little yesterday, a report which was commissioned by this Tory government that concluded that the Conservatives had mismanaged the health service. And as I said yesterday, I'm still amazed that the government commissioned a report that was going to savage their handling of the NHS, but there it is. You could sort of understand it if they intended to do something useful. It's like, okay, we'd better face up to the reality because we want to actually fix it. But they don't. So I'm still amazed they commissioned such a report. But perhaps the mess is so bad now that even the Tories can't be bothered hiding it. And for his part, Sunak tried to claim that Starmer was only backing the strikers because they fund Labour. And in reality, I don't know, this may work on some people, I suppose, but it's not objectively true, is it? Because let's think about the unions getting the most attention from the Tory press and the government. So what do we have? Well, we have the RMT, most famously, of course, representing rail workers. Not train drivers, but rail workers. They don't donate to the Labour Party, though, do they? We've got the Royal College of Nursing, representing nurses. They don't donate to the Labour Party either. We've got the PCS, representing civil servants. No, they don't donate to the Labour Party either. So there are some unions taking action right now who do donate to Labour, but they tend not to be the ones that are on the front pages of the Tory press, are they? The ones that the Tories are making all the fuss about. And for all Sunak's attempts to raise the tempo with these games, I'm not sure he would have come across too well with non-partisan voters here, because much of the public know that pay has been squeezed badly, too badly. Any attempts to claim that there was no money for pay increases was surely dispelled by Starmer pointing out just how easily the government could get more money. You know, for example, he talked about the scrapping of non-dom status. And it's like, if Sunak offered no defence of a policy that lets rich people escape taxation, even when he's also trying to claim that we haven't got the money for essential public services. It doesn't quite work. You know, Sunak tried to say that he was following the advice of the independent pay review boards in terms of the pay offers for public sector workers. But although the review boards are independent, they are genuinely independent. There's no ministers sit on them or anything. But at the same time, they can't just decide. The guidelines, the criteria they have to work with are set by the government. It's no coincidence that under Labour, those pay review bodies recommend pay increases that meet or exceed inflation, and not at all under the Tories. Something that Starmer alluded to when he said that under the last Labour government, nurses got decent pay and no strikes. And as for Sunak's strategy, I know I've said before that I don't think he's really very good here. He can do the shouty thing. I mean, there was a bit of shouting from Starmer and Sunak today. It all got a bit heated. But there was a very weird response he gave. So when Sunak was trying to big up his support for nurses, he was trying to claim that actually he was supporting nurses, he said that last year, when other public sector workers got no pay increase, that nurses got 3%. He took the credit for that, you know. But that's highlighting two things that you'd think the government wanted to keep quiet. First, that last year, a lot of public sector workers got no increase at all. He just said so. And last year was not the big year of a broken economy, at least not according to the Tories. They said things were going well. Second, he was implying that the government personally intervened to give the nurses this 3% because he was trying to claim personal credit. Well, if the government can intervene like this, why is he now hiding behind pay review boards as if the government's got nothing to do with it? Make your mind up. Are the government responsible or not? Either pay is set by the government or it is not. Granted, Starmer didn't point this out to make it super clear to anyone watching, and again, I think he really should have. But I still thought it was a surprising line for Sunak to take. That being said, Starmer's main line of attack will stick. Absolutely, it will stick. So what he pointed out multiple times in his responses is that all Sunak was doing was seeking to blame everyone else for the mess. Because that's what it was. Sunak, every response, it was like someone else's fault and he should do nothing about it. Very much like Boris Johnson. And this will be a theme that Labour can use all the way to the election. That's not just of its time right now. Because little political points being scored on something that's not going to be around in 2 years isn't that useful. It can maintain pressure in the polls, sure, but it's not that useful. What you need is something that you can carry on using all the way to the election. And after all, what are the Conservatives and Labour asking for during a general election campaign? What are they both asking for? The power to sort out the country's mess. Vote for us, give us the power to get our legislation through and we can deal with this mess. What good is a vote for the Conservatives if their leader is saying that everything is someone else's fault and that he has no power to do anything about it, even with a large majority? I mean, if you can't use a large parliamentary majority to sort the country out, Starmer is saying, I know how to use one. And for his final question, Starmer did what he did last week. And I'm wondering if this is now going to be the tactic from now on. So in order to prevent Sunak going off on a Johnson-esque grandstanding rant about any old shit, Starmer asked Sunak to comment on the cross-party support that Ukraine had enjoyed in the face of Russian aggression. Obviously, Sunak had to agree. Another opportunity to have a rant without any comeback from Starmer gone again, because it would look crass. That being said, I do think, as I said, Starmer may have missed a couple of good comebacks, but the general theme will stick, and it's one he can just use time and again. Because Rishi Sunak's response to everything will be to blame others, and it will be to say how he can't do anything about it. And that will be very powerful at the general election, I think. But then on to Stephen Flyyn of the SNP. I thought his questions were rather good this week. There was one particular killer line, I thought. So he first of all pointed out that the Scottish government had come to an agreement which meant a stop to the nursing strikes north of the border. An obvious one to start off with there, and an obvious comeback for Sunak because he took credit for it by talking of the money that the Westminster government provided for it. It's like Sunak was basically saying, oh, no problem, Steve, mate. No problem. I provided the money so you could do that. But the thing is, I'm thinking, so who's that supposed to fall, though? Because there is always some muddying of the waters when it comes to who has credit and blame for various things with devolved bodies. So when you've got a national and a devolved government, and there's like a crossover there, obviously each one will try and claim credit for the good things that happen and throw blame for the bad things that happen. That's why some people don't like devolution. But in this case, the strikes have been called off in Scotland and not in England. So if the Tories were trying to claim credit for averting nursing strikes in Scotland, shouldn't they have been able to do the same thing in England? But then a really good line from Flyyn. So he moved on to energy. Obviously, that's going to be a big issue this winter, of course, along with the usual NHS crisis, energy, the cost of energy. And he talked about the worrying cost of that energy for people in Scotland. Remarked that Scotland uses only a small proportion of the gas it extracts. And then he said, what is it, something like, isn't the problem that Scotland has the energy, but what it needs is the power? I thought that was a very clever line. And worth bringing up, like in reality, I don't know how an independent Scotland, under the SNP or anyone else, would manage its energy. Because in reality, Scotland, no part of the UK actually extracts gas and oil. It's all done by private companies. It's like when the Tories gone about fracking. Oh, we should get our own gas from fracking. It's like, it wouldn't be our own gas, would it? It wouldn't be our own gas. It would pay the price, the international price. And it's the same with the gas and oil there. So I don't know how that would be managed. Because the SNP have shown reluctance to change the arrangement. There's no suggestion from them that they would get a government organisation to exploit the reserves there. But it is clear that the capacity is there for Scotland alone to manage energy bills much more favourably. I mean, apart from anything else, the UK doesn't need to have the priciest energy bills in the world. That is just the cost of a Tory government for you. So, but yeah, it was a very good line. It's a very good thing to try and focus on, especially over winter. But what we seem to get from Labour, the SNP and Lib Dems were the policy areas that they would like the public to consider in terms of government action. Or inaction, as the case may be. Because like I say, it has to be said, all of Sunak's responses were on the theme of his government has done all it's going to do. Everything, every single question he was asked got a response where he either boasted about what they'd already done, but still saying that not going to do anything else, as if they've done everything they're going to do, or justified not doing anything about it at all. There wasn't a single response that was about what the government are going to do, what they're going to do. In which case, what is the point of the government? If the Tories are saying they've done everything they can do now, what is the point of them? And this will, as I say, be the last PMQs for a few weeks now because Parliament goes on into Christmas recess. It goes into recess next week, but it's before Wednesday. I think Tuesday might be the last day. So when it returns, you would think quite a bit will have happened. Be interested to see how the public opinion will have settled. I think the next PMQ is the 11th of January. So that's like 4 weeks before we get another one of these. But there we are anyway. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.